and Munster, with a chance of some localised flooding in the southeast. Dry spells in the north and northwest. Lowest temperatures tonight of 10 to 13 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
So another rollover in our cash machine competition today. Nobody answered when we called at 3 o'clock, so it means the total of €5,666.21 up for grabs tomorrow, and we will be adding to that total, so you can tune into News Talk Breakfast tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. to find out the new amount.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every UEFA Champions League and Europa League match live on BT Sport this season.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Welcome along, Football Show. Lots to discuss. Daniel McDonnell of the Irish Independent in studio. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Joe.
So, in no particular order, there is obviously the situation at Manchester United, which has been much discussed at this stage. There's also talk of a takeover at Dundalk. There's ticket touts. There's the promotion around the FAI Cup final. Dan, I know you want to talk about that. There's Josh Cavallo in Australia. There is Finland 1, Republic of Ireland 2 from last night. There's also an extraordinary piece which has been written in The Athletic about the situation in Iceland when it comes to allegations of sexual assault against members of the team, and the Icelandic FA president has had to resign. All 15 board members have resigned, and Stuart James and Stefan Snare spent a week out in Iceland over the last while just talking to different people and trying to tie everything together. And one of the net results is that at their most recent qualifier, their national stadium, and we all think of Iceland and think of England at Euro 2016 and the thunderclap and the popularity. Just 1,600 people at their most recent game, their lowest crowd for a competitive fixture since 1997. So to say that the atmosphere around the team has become toxic is an understatement. So that's a story we'll touch on. Dan was tweeting about it earlier on this afternoon. Manchester United, it depends which paper you pick up. I saw the Sun over there saying United to give Solskjaer the Spurs match. Your paper reckons he has 3 games to save his job, so it's either Spurs match or 3 games, which brings him up to the international window. Either way, when we're talking about 1 to 3 games to save a job,
It doesn't look great when you get to that. I mean, I heard Andy McDonnell at you, I think was it last night, and he's got time. That was Andy's information, wasn't it? He's got time, but he wasn't also saying he's got an indefinite amount of time. It was the more polite way of saying you've got X amount of games to save your job. I mean, this never ends well, does it? When you get into this vulnerable situation, like we always talked about this topic. I mean, in a way, what do you talk about when he's gone? Like the whole discourse around Manchester United is dominated by it, and I've always felt he was always a couple of games away from a crisis, and that's obviously, you need to win your way out of that, like win a big trophy to get yourself out of that situation. But now it's just like, I don't know how you recover from it, and it's more the point really, even that the trashings are not like random events in games. Like you can have bad luck, you can have a hammering, like even the Spurs one where they were hammered, was it 6-1 last year? There was a red card, and there are mad games where things happen, they run away from you, but it's more the sort of sustained issues, and Leicester and the first half against Atlanta, and all of that feeding into what happened. I mean, Paul Scholes effectively predicted it, and I don't know. I mean, where do you escape from that? You don't. So we'll see. You tell me, as someone who might follow Manchester United affairs more closely, like if they go and win at Spurs on Saturday, are people going to be lighting up sort of phone-ins or text messages that even going, well, that shows like the players are with him, he deserves another crack? Or is it irrelevant if then City just come and turn them over the following week? I don't see, like, you're living game to game until your next big defeat, and then it'll be gone, right?
probably, yeah. What manager wants to take over right now as well?
Well, I mean, there's probably thousands of out-of-work managers who want to take over, but I guess in that elite bracket, you know, of that super WhatsApp group of super managers, who is watching this LinkedIn Premium, you know, LinkedIn Premium managers, who's responding to this advertising?
When I say right now, I mean I would just hang on until we get Spurs away at Atlanta.
Oh, sorry. I take up your point.
I'll take over during the international window. That's the time to take over.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic boardroom tactic. If you want your new manager to come in, you do not want them to start off with a defeat. You want to look at the fixture list, look at your easiest one of 3 or 4 games, and then you end up with that great goodwill vibe of, well, look at, you should have brought him in earlier.
When I say who wants to take over right now in the broader meaning of the word, I mean lots. It's still a very attractive position.
Of course it is.
Very attractive.
It's still one of the top 5 jobs in the world.
But also the team are in good shape.
And it's a good squad. You know, you have to deal with the Ronaldo issue, obviously.
Deal with the Ronaldo issue. Get Conte in. Get Cristiano.
They do need someone like that, don't they?
They need someone to take on Ronaldo.
Listen, you know, the media were a nightmare when it comes to this stuff, really, the media, because you know that the thing that the manager needs to do is to probably come in and deal with the Ronaldo issue, you know, sensitively. Like if the media glare didn't exist, you know, you could come in and sort of get on with it, but you just know that, like, and it's the right thing to ask, because it's what we're talking about here. At your first press conference, Antonio Conte, are you prepared to drop Ronaldo? Should be a question that's asked, or a version of the same. And then from the start, that sets the agenda, and you're, you know, you live or die by your actions arising from that. Now, some people would say, and it's not an unfair comment, that an elite coach, you know, can find a way to fit Ronaldo into a side and yet still be able to execute an effective game plan, you know, and that's what you're paying them for, you know. But evidently, like, it's you know, it's not a long-term fix, Ronaldo, and it's pretty clear. You know, you need someone with a strength of personality that could manage the situation where Ronaldo just doesn't play some games. That's
some games, yeah.
Challenge.
Because Neville has made the point that in Ronaldo's first stint, Ji-sung Park, Darren Fletcher, Tevez, Rooney did a lot of running for him. He was never a workhorse, Ronaldo. He was never up there, I'll press, I'll lead from the front. So there is a way to work around one passenger. Now, potentially, United's problem is they've Pogba and they've a few other, Bruno Fernandes. I think he's a showy presser as opposed to being an effective presser. I think
I'm running really hard here.
There's a little bit of show there, as opposed to Ji-sung Park, who you'd realise had covered 15k a game without really noticing him. So look, there are those extra issues around Ronaldo and Pogba and the balance of the squad and all that kind of stuff. But on the whole, there's a lot right with that squad.
No, there is, and sometimes, you know, you can always jump from one conclusion to the next. So it's like, and we've sort of done it there. You know, Ronaldo maybe, you know, need to drop him sometimes. The extreme of that becomes he just needs to not play at all. Like, there's going to be games where, you know, opposition team are defending deep, and that's exactly who you want on the pitch, and he'll win them games and win them points, and has done that this season. It's more at certain times. It's the accommodation of them.
Totally agree. We'll get bogged down in all this, and we talked a lot about United.
Yeah.
If Solskjaer was to draw with Spurs, beat Atalanta and lose to Man City 2-0, and they said, Ole, your time is up, thank you so much, you've done a very good job in many ways, what Premier League job would Solskjaer be offered?
It'd be hard to see him get anyone, wouldn't it, really? I mean, like, see, again, with these things, like, you see certain managers getting, this is a very tactical answer, but, like, you know, you have some managers who are in jobs because they're very well connected to, like, super agents or something like that, so they'll get into a job very soon, whether they should or not. But I don't get the sense that he has that connection. He came in through a slightly different route. You know, it's not like, you know, there was some powerful broker, you know, a sort of Zahavi figure or something who got him in. Like, you know, you saw, like, Mark Hughes, for example, got into Man City. He was very, very well connected with his agent, and he popped up in a lot of places afterwards. Did I see someone say the other day, I was like, Jan Haga Fjordtoft, I don't actually want to get that wrong, but someone in the Norwegian sphere of things who thought he'd be going to their national team eventually. So, which is a logical one, but I couldn't really see the Premier League angle, you know. Do you? You know, I couldn't see it.
No, I don't think so.
No, he did all right. I mean, I know people can be disparaging about it, but, like, he did quite a good job at Molde at a very different level, and clearly is probably in some ways a project type of manager. And in reality, if you go below the top 5 or 6 clubs in the Premier League, your job is generally more quick hit anyway. There's very few. You have someone like, might have Graham Potter there, who's a bit more of a, it was a concept, like the appointment of going for someone like that, and even maybe Hasenhüttl to a degree, but a lot of the other appointments are more in and out. Maybe some of the ones coming up actually are maybe fit into that mold, but like I don't see him. He's not going to become like one of those managers who you're thinking, there's 12 games to go in the season, we're struggling here, go and get Solskjaer. Like that's not his gig.
Do you think he has done a very good job in lots of ways and handled lots of situations like Pogba last year, where Mino Raiola came out and said that he was going to leave at the end of the season? That was on the eve of a Champions League game. Handled a lot of those situations well, whereas with Mourinho, they turned into raging fires and were awful.
Oh yeah.
Maybe the big mistake he made was not getting a more experienced coaching staff when you think about it. As in, you've Carrick there, and you have Kieran McKenna,
Fermanagh,
Fletcher, and then you've Mike Phelan, who looks very much on the outside of things now. Mike Phelan he never seems to be too involved in any conversations, although he does have experience, but I get the impression he's slightly outside of the inner circle. It's hard to know. But you think of Ferguson, who had the humility, and it was a humility, to recognise post winning the treble that the game was changing, that 4-4-2 wasn't going to work anymore. Who can take me forward? And it was Carlos Queiroz.
Yeah.
And that resulted, admittedly, in going off and buying a Varane and things not quite running smoothly all the time. But there was an evolution there.
Yeah.
So that was Ferguson saying, well, I don't know everything. I look at Solskjaer's team, it's a touch inexperienced. They looked a little caught in the headlights on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I do see that point. I mean, I think it is one of those things that is said when things are going badly, because clearly you have to find a reason and you have to find something.
I wasn't saying it 2 months ago.
No, and could you tell me who the backroom teams were of a load of other, like,
go on, hit me.
Well, I don't know. Come on, give me your Liverpool backup. You should actually know the Liverpool one.
I do. I can't pronounce his name.
Pep
Linders.
Yeah, like so.
However, the simple answer there is irrelevant. Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah.
The simple answer with Mourinho is irrelevant. Mourinho.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like Thomas Tuchel came into Chelsea.
I don't need to know Tuchel's either.
But for example, well, some people might have said he needs someone who knows the Premier League. That might, if things had gone badly, they might have said, well, maybe he should have called on. Like for example, he retained Anthony Barry, who's getting rave reviews for his work with Ireland. But Anthony Barry's 34, and had previously been at Wigan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And hadn't had a great career as a player. Like, people talk sometimes about you should have this experienced figure with you, and maybe people can scream like loads of brilliant examples to me. Maybe there are, like, back in the day in Southgate have Terry Venables in helping him out for a while. But sometimes in those arrangements, it almost serves to drum home the manager's inexperience that they've had to go for this figure, to guide them. I know you have great coaches.
Venables
Steve Holland would have been under Mourinho, who had a great reputation as the top coach, and McLaren came from that sort of school, to be fair. His profile came after that time. Like, he was regarded as a great number two. I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just, I think it's more a case of people are I understand where this is coming from now, and if it's true that players are maybe uninspired by some of this, then that's a problem. But I don't know, for someone in Ole's position, is it not better for him for someone who has question marks around his authority, that he is seen as the most authoritative coach in that group, as opposed to like bringing in someone who's towers over him? I'm
not saying towers over him, and I'm not saying high profile. Like, geez, bringing in Venables.
A bit more. No, I know what you're saying. That's an extreme version of it. It would have been good fun, obviously, if he'd done a modern version of it. Yeah. He brings in Tony Pulis for defensive work.
I'm talking about scouring European football for the best thought of coaches and saying, I'm at Manchester United, let's come, let's talk. Whereas Carrick, Fletcher, McKenna was one of those. I did a piece of McKenna who was at Spurs previously and now has been spoken about in negative terms, but prior to that was being spoken about as an up and coming. Well, up and coming is the issue. Up and coming,
like Anthony Barry,
coach. And Anthony Barry. But when the manager is inexperienced, I just think it's a question mark.
I think the most significant aspect of that, and of course, I did see Gary Neville pointing this out, that when things are going badly, stuff comes out that it maybe players and people have to people around players are, all of a sudden it's, the coaching staff is the problem. No, the players are the problem.
No, the PR game at the moment is awful.
Becomes an issue, but it's something that's said a lot. A certain manager is in a situation and they say, well, they should have got someone experienced around them, but I just think that's a difficult thing to do. Like, even
it's too late now. It's
to establish that trust, even as well. Like, maybe he wants a team around him that he really trusts, and that's a very important thing. And some people, you see examples where people have had a coach foisted upon them, and that actually can be seen as undermining your authority in some ways. So, but does he have someone in his previous life, and places he's worked with that he could have leaned upon? Maybe, and maybe there's something in that. Maybe there is a valid point with it.
Is there a takeover imminent at Dundalk?
There is, I think so, yeah. No, I mean, there is. Although, people who have obviously, Dundalk have been a very high-profile club over the last 7-8 years in the sort of above average, so for like a League of Ireland side, and that, people who maybe just tune in and out and drop in and out will have seen them winning a lot of stuff, will have seen them in the Europa League group stages twice, and may wonder why they're now battling to avoid relegation this season. And there's been a lot of headlines generated by off the field stuff there, and you would have covered it previously on this show, and Shane Keegan would have spoken recently about maybe idiosyncratic aspects of his working life there. So while everything comes with the caveat that people making decisions there are prone to change their mind at very short notice, and change their focus, it does appear, there's been very advanced discussions about selling up to the point where people have submitted written offers and they're awaiting correspondence on those offers. So it does appear there will be a departure of the American ownership and new ones will be coming in.
And am I right to believe it's the Saudis?
Not the Saudis, no, not the Saudis. There may possibly be an Iranian link, all right, to the prospective new owners, who, my understanding, are sort of in pole position at the moment, which would be, and I would have written about this evening. There's a sort of an Iranian businessman, Welsh-Iranian businessman who runs Glentoran as part of a consortium, and my information would be that a sort of consortium linked to the Glentoran ownership are now very much to the fore in the Dundalk bid, versus the alternative, which would be a more local consortium made up of some of the previous owners prior to the Americans, and also Stat Sports, the sort of they're a tech firm who people may be aware of for their work with sports science, like around the world. They're a real success story, and they're the two, I think, main bids in the shake-up, and it may be leaning north at the moment as opposed to local.
Okay, so the situation at the moment is that the club is very much up for sale and it's bring your bids to us, as opposed to, well, we've just suddenly been landed with an offer we couldn't refuse unexpectedly.
Yeah.
They want out.
They do, yeah. And
Peak six,
yeah. I mean, I don't want to sort of bog down with detail that can make it too dense, but yeah, it is basically peak six. Yes, they don't own 100% of the club, but they're the principal owners.
And how long have they been looking to get out for?
Well, that's an interesting point in itself, because I sort of now would be aware that there's been, across the year, I think there's been discussions and advances and talks going on. But it's only really, and which would make you think that maybe they were looking to get out from a while back, but it's only really since the summer you've got the sense that they're ready to go. Like, just maybe to put some points in the road on this, like Dundalk last year in 2020 qualified for the Europa League group stages, which was a huge achievement. It was after they got a bit of a quirky route through, and it was with Filippo, the Italian manager, who was plucked out of nowhere. And I remember the night that they beat Sheriff, who are now, like, Sheriff are sort of an incredible story. Yeah. And they beat Sheriff in a penalty shootout, and basically they ended up playing a team from the Faroes, and there's like £3 million for getting into the group stages. And I remember talking to some people around that time who were thinking that peak six, the Americans, they'd come in, they had plans for breaking Europe, they'd made some quirky decisions, they were on course to lose a fair bit of money last year, and then all of a sudden they qualify for the group stages. And that was a real point in the road where some people thought, in golf parlance, you know, it could be level par here. You know, this is a chance for maybe things aren't necessarily going great, and maybe this could be the point where they talk about maybe finding a way out, but no damage done. What they decided to do over the winter was instead go again and invest quite heavily in the squad, in particular on a load of players from overseas. And it's been an absolute disaster. They've got a lot of hassle, a lot of grief. I think it's you know, Peak Six are trying to invest in football clubs elsewhere, and I think even, you know, the internet exists, you know, your digital footprint exists, and I think some of the mistakes they've made at Dundalk have probably not been great for their brand, and I think it's been clear for some time that they would be open to offers, and I think that's obviously come to a head now.
And so you mentioned that a consortium involved with Glentoran, or maybe
linked to the ownership. I don't want to. It's a bit grey to some degree, but certainly there is a link, with that group.
So how would you describe them then?
Well, they're they are. I think they are a Northern Irish consortium. Not everyone is from Northern Ireland, and they're linked with the group who currently run Glentoran. I'm not saying it's 100% all of the same people that run Glentoran, or 100% all of the same people, because I can't stand over that.
Okay.
But there's certainly
some of them.
There's a link there. Mags Byrne, who previously chief executive of Sunderland, is not part of that consortium, but I believe has been a part of. She has a good relationship with the Americans and has maybe been a bit of a go-between in terms of getting people talking to each other.
And would you say, for Dundalk fans listening, so they may be of interest, they will be of interest, is this a big injection of money? Is this a fairly even-handed type consortium that's taken over?
It's unclear. I think it's unclear. I think because they're a bit of an unknown quantity, and I think they would have to prove themselves to people if they come in. And I think, having previously seen the club leave local hands to the outside investment from America, and that hasn't gone well, I think there would be a slight wariness about handing it over to another group who haven't fully revealed themselves, shall we say. I presume they will in due course, but at the moment they haven't. Whereas the alternative is a more local company, local people that they know. I think that would probably be the preferred one for a lot of people from Dundalk. So I think if this other crew did happen to get it, I think they'd have a fair bit of work to do to convince people, because people have been burned by
the foreign experience.
The foreign experience, the unknown.
Okay. By the way, Vinnie Perth was just talking, so they lost to St. Pat's obviously on Monday, and relegation hangs over the club, the potential of it. And just to make a bad situation worse, two backroom staff, medical physio staff, Danny Miller and Graham Norton, left. And Vinnie Perth was talking about how this has hurt the players and they're going to be a big loss. And clearly it's not a good thing when you've trusted medical and physio staff who've been there for the good days and have the trust of the players depart, not least at this point in the season when things are so grim. So it's everything coming out seems like a mess.
I mean, sometimes we get accused of sort of exaggerating stuff, in the media. That's the thing. But really, there's no other way of phrasing it but that, it's been one disaster after the other there, and the stream of departures from the club over the last 12 to 18 months, be it playing, be it medical, be it administrative or
staff retention, volunteer,
and even within that piece you referenced Vinnie Perth. I think he was speaking after the game on Monday, and he also spoke on radio about it. We have a situation where the manager is basically saying, so these backroom members have left under a bit of a cloud, and the manager is saying, I can completely understand why they did it. And making references to the environment behind the scenes, then it's not good. It's like there's a clear clash of personalities with people there. And I'm not saying it's linked, by the way, to those backroom departures, but I think generally I would have spoken about this, written about this previously. You had a situation where even Vinnie Perth came back in the summer. The sporting director, Jim Magilton, and people would be obviously very familiar with his name, ex-Northern Ireland international, it would be widely known that he was opposed to Vinnie Perth coming back, yet the decision was made to bring Vinnie Perth back, is not it's not conducive to like a very good working relationship.
Some friction
day-to-day.
points there.
And there's been loads of that stuff, versions of that stuff going on, and what they need is certainty and clarity. What I would say, just to finish on this, like they play Waterford on Friday in what is a really important game, because Waterford are currently arguably their main or one of their main rivals to avoid that relegation playoff. I don't think the atmosphere is going to be great up there on Friday, because there's a lot of anger, a lot of local anger up there, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays itself out.
Okay, you're listening to Dan McDonnell there of the Irish Independent. Dan staying with us. Loads more to talk about. Football on Off the Ball is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We're back in 1 sec. I'll run you through the League Cup latest as well.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Catch the biggest live Premier League games every weekend on Sky Sports.
Project Green with Bobby Kerr.
Project Green is a brand new podcast series where we explore sustainability within businesses and discuss the steps industries are taking to reduce their carbon footprint. This week it's all about energy. We'll hear from the likes of Ellen Diskin from the ESB Networks, John Mullins of Amarenco, and Noel Caniff of Wind Energy Ireland.
Project Green with Bobby Kerr.
A new podcast series from News Talk, with thanks to ESB Networks.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now at newstalk.com or the News Talk app powered by GoLoud.
Hurry, the clock is ticking on the Harvey Norman 18th birthday sale. That's right, it's the final weekend and your last chance to save with final reductions in-store and online across our massive range of appliances and technology. Save €50 on the Electrolux built-in double oven, now $849. Or get the Jabra Elite 7 Pro true wireless earbuds, just $199. Shop these birthday deals and so much more in-store and online. But hurry, the Harvey Norman 18th birthday sale must end Sunday.
Now it's official. Air Mobile has Ireland's best 5G network availability as verified by Ookla. Experience the speed of 5G and the freedom of no-limits 5G data with the Samsung Galaxy S21 5G. Connect more with Air Mobile. Call 1-800-500-300, go in store or visit air.ie. Air, let's make possible. Based on analysis by Ookla of Speed Test Intelligence 5G availability data in Ireland Q2 2021. Coverage subject to availability. Available on selected plans. 24-month contract subject to fair usage. For terms, see air.ie.
You deserve more than a bank. At On Post Money, we understand that big decisions are easier to make when things work with you, not against. So whether you want to get a new car or convert that empty attic into an office, you'll find the lowest rate on personal loans over 15k and our simple process. Visit onpost.com/loans or your local post office. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. New applications only. Info correct as of 1st of July 2021. Source ccpc.ie for Ireland's lowest rate. On Post acts as a credit intermediary on behalf of Avantcard DAC. On Post trading as On Post Money is authorised as a credit intermediary by the CCPC. Avantcard DAC trading as Avant Money is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Gas Networks Ireland is changing Ireland's energy future. Thanks to natural gas, we already connect over 700,000 Irish homes and businesses to affordable and efficient energy. And now, with renewable gas, we're moving towards a cleaner energy future. Enjoy the reliability and convenience of gas. Visit gasnetworks.ie to connect today. Gas Networks Ireland. Progress. Naturally. Subject to availability, T's and C's apply.
What makes Irish farming so unique is the natural conditions and the heritage it has.
All our beef is Irish beef. It's very important.
It's the small-scale producer that produces top-quality cattle that keeps those villages and country life going and looks after the land passionately.
At Supermax, we serve only 100% prime Irish beef, and we are passionate about our relationships with our farmers and suppliers. They give us the best, so we can serve you the best.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every UEFA Champions League and Europa League match live on BT Sport this season.
Welcome back. Joe Molloy, Dan McDonnell here. So just about to go full times in the League Cup games this evening. Liverpool 2-0 up away to Preston, Minamino and Origi with the goals there. We have Brentford 2-1 up away to Stoke. Still 0-0, West Ham at home to Man City this evening in the Premier League affair. Burnley 0, Tottenham 1, and it's 2-2 between Leicester and Brighton. Another Premier League affair there. So that is where we are in the League Cup this evening. Dan, the Portugal match is sold out.
Yeah.
55,000. very happy customers, or so we thought. So
only 52, I believe, Joe. That's the issue.
Only 52?
It says 51,700, but I think that even with seat kills and stuff, there might be a bit less than that. Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's why, I mean, maybe if it was 55,000, we wouldn't have this issue.
I suspect we may. So people were really keen to get the tickets for a whole host of reasons. Ronaldo in town definitely helps things along. And then, of course, we're all starved to go to see Ireland, so that helps too. And Portugal are a glamour side. So within minutes, I think, of going on general sale, people were disappointedly realising that there were no tickets left. And then pretty quickly on resale websites, there were tickets for the match being quoted at €420, for instance.
Yeah.
More than 3 times their face value. And so this was an area of concern, as you can imagine. So it's kind of an interesting one. I'm going to play 2 clips. Noel Rock is a former Fine Gael TD. He was with Henry McKean this morning, and he was involved in drafting the now current legislation when it comes to ticket touting. And he was just explaining why, in spite of the legislation, it didn't have an effect on the Portugal game. So have a listen.
Well, as a fan, it's massively disappointing. The reason I wrote the legislation and campaigned for the legislation to be enacted was to ensure that this didn't happen, to ensure that fans were protected. The legislation, as I wrote it, was amended and changed, which meant that venues had to be designated, or events had to be designated and opt in to this legislation in effect. In the case of this event, or this venue, the Aviva Stadium, that didn't happen. The FAI took their eye off the ball, in essence. However, there is obviously a legitimate criticism to be had that maybe they shouldn't have needed to opt in the first place. But when it comes to this particular event, it's quite clear that the FAI were aware that they could have opted in, but didn't opt in time. What I would hope will happen now is that the FAI will choose to designate the Aviva Stadium, along with the IRFU, as a designated venue, and accordingly, all future games will be protected and fans will be protected. That was always the intent of the legislation. That's what I hope will happen from here.
So that was Noel Rock. Here's Leo Varadkar.
This is new legislation. It's only just been enacted in the last couple of months. So under the legislation, the initial onus is on the organiser or the host of the event to designate it. So I understand that the FAI has now put in an application to have the Ireland-Portugal match designated, and my department is working on that application now. But what we're going to do today and tomorrow and over the next couple of days is sit down with Croke Park, sit down with the Aviva, sit down with the major sporting bodies, FAI, GAA and IRFU, and suggest to them, or at least impress on them, the advantages of having those events designated, because we have 3 rugby internationals coming up, as you know. There'll be other soccer internationals as well, and we want to make sure that as many of them get designated as possible. And like I say, FAI have put that application in now. Perhaps they should have done it sooner. Perhaps we should have acted sooner. But like I say, this is new legislation, and those meetings are going to happen over the next couple of days.
I mean,
hit me with some words, Joe.
Idiotic.
What? The fact it wasn't covered?
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like, our politicians. We'll get on. I mean, the administrators, FAI.
Don't start me on politicians and sport.
I tell you the problem with politicians.
How's that World Cup bit going? Anyway, sorry.
Imagine we were sitting around saying, Dan, Taoiseach's been on to us. Me and you have to draft up some kind of legislation against ticket touting. What venues would you say, Dan, ticket touting might be most likely to be an issue for us going forward? What would you say? Give me 1. Give me 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very hard. I've seen a couple of tout sites like Dailymount in the last couple of years, to be fair.
No, Dailymount's popular.
Demand's been an issue.
Dan, there's no bad ideas.
Because there's 3,000 people only allowed to go, but still.
I'm going to keep Dailymount on the table. But give me, what would you say? Give me 2 that might jump to mind.
Yeah,
events that might have ticket touts.
Well, where are we holding the 2030 World Cup? It's in the Aviva in Croke Park, isn't it? I think that's where we're having it.
To not just say, well, if we're talking about touting, we're talking about these 2 venues in 90% of cases. Let's just automatically have these inbuilt into our legislation.
Yeah.
That is pretty embarrassing stuff. Do you know what makes you wonder? with actually more complicated stuff, can you imagine the stuff that's going on in Leinster House? Can you imagine the cock-ups that we don't even hear about half the time?
Well, I don't think you need to imagine it. We can just see how things play out.
Do we still use that printer? Remember they had to change the printer because it was too high for the roof and they had to spend a gazillion to fix the printer.
God, that's just added to the list. As I said, like,
that was a good one.
The thick of it reality. I'm trying to figure out which is which.
In fairness to Noel Rock, he did say, oh, well, look, maybe we should have thought about...
Yeah,
and so hands up. But I mean,
he was proactive on that sort of policy for some period of time, to be fair to him. But it does appear like, and I mean, there would be a view that maybe that still the FAI maybe might have dropped the ball to some degree as well by not applying for this.
So there's the politicians and then the administrators. So we're sitting around. Should we discuss touting once? You know, there's new touting legislation. Should we talk about that for 5 minutes? Apparently, we have to apply for it to cover our fan base.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think like there's
between the two of them. Talk about creating an issue where both messed up so bad.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, I think it's more. It seems to me like I've only actually heard those clips. I wasn't necessarily working on this today because I know Leo Vrecker did it at a news event. It would have come up with other stuff, so it wasn't, say, a sports press conference event where I heard all the questions and all the discussions around it. But it does appear like, you know, there was like straightforward ways to avoid this, you know, that could have been
I just heard the clips as well.
Exactly, and that'd be my like that's I think most people who hear that would probably reach that conclusion, to be fair, you know, but sometimes you're missing some reasons that it was a bit more complicated, you know, in some way. I don't know. You know, like it just seems like in Irish life at the moment we spend our whole time talking about, well, the legislation's coming in Thursday, now it's Friday, now it's Sunday, a couple of days, actually we'll get it done by midnight. It's like it's like a constant to-do list that people don't realise, you know, we can maybe get some of this sorted earlier, because that was the thing, it would take a couple of days, then it's midnight tonight, this legislation is now coming in, so I mean, you can get these things done sometimes with a bit of urgency. Maybe everyone's just like, it's like a serious theme, and everyone's so buzzing that like an Ireland game was sold out initially. It's like, what was it? Maybe the FAI weren't prepared for an Ireland game to sell out. I mean, they've spent the guts of the last decade trying to give people tickets to go to the games.
I hear you.
You know, for the touts.
All they probably had to do was send an email then.
I know.
You know, the touting stuff. Yeah, we'll go for that.
If there's like a touts,
kind regards.
If there's a touts like WhatsApp group of some description or some message board where they all go, I think in recent years, I don't think they've been thinking, well, let's get ourselves down to the Aviva Ireland are playing. It's more a case of, well, there's no point in us going down there because the FAI are actively giving tickets to like hordes of school children to like fill games and fill stadiums.
No, I get all that. I want you to dig into this deeper for me.
Okay.
I want you, next question I have. I want you to find out what would the FAI have had to do to be covered. Like, is there a form they would have had to fill out, or like, is there a text message they have to respond to?
Yeah, I just
want to know exactly what they did.
Everyone has to fill out forms now, you know, for COVID. Like, you know, you have to go to some event. It's like just tick, you know, 4 or 5 boxes.
Yeah.
Maybe it was one of those.
Well, I want to know. I want to know what they didn't do that they could have just done.
I think asking appears to be the
just think on the phone.
It's like any chance, you know.
Joe and Dan, we hear you're drafting the legislation. Put us down for one.
Like, it's like a docket, you know. You just have to
let's move off.
The docket to book a taxi. You just need to submit the docket.
It's too ridiculous.
No taxi.
This one's too ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Josh Cavallo, we wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
21 years of age. If you haven't heard of Josh Cavallo, that's okay. He's only really, gone global, I suppose, today in many ways. He plays in the A-League in Australia. He plays for Adelaide United, like I said, 21 years of age. He is now the only known current male top-flight professional footballer in the world. Seems to come out as gay. He released a video. It's been a journey to get to this point in my life. Couldn't be happier with my decision to come out. I've been fighting my sexuality for over 6 years now. I'm glad I can put that to rest. He talked about how he always felt the need to hide himself because I was ashamed I'd never be able to do what I loved and be gay. Hiding who I truly am to pursue a dream I always wished for as a kid, to play football and to be treated equally, never felt like a reality. And then he said, and I thought this was quite an interesting point, he's talking about the process of hiding. He said, I had no emotions. My life was great, but it wasn't a life where I got to be my authentic self. Instead of celebrating, I sat in my bed crying at night. having to constantly lie to the people I cared about wasn't the way I wanted to live the rest of my life. My double life started to have a huge influence on my mental health. And I'm sure it did. So the reaction generally from the footballing world, everybody from Gary Lineker to Gerard Piqué to Antoine Griezmann on social media has been massively supportive. And that's where we are at the moment. So
yeah, I think a point where this story comes up, people will say, well, this shouldn't be a news story. And of course, that's fundamentally correct in that, you would hope that this wasn't a news story. But the reason it is a news story is because players sort of within men's football who feel comfortable enough to come out and say that are in such a minority. They're just not in a position where they feel free to do it. There's a handful of examples in recent years. I think Thomas Hitzlsperger. There was the American guy Robbie Rogers.
Yeah. Now Hitzlsperger, he came out after he'd retired in 2013.
Yeah.
And Robbie Rogers was retiring and had retired, but then he returned to the LA Galaxy after the announcement and won the MLS Cup. So he became, in effect, the first openly gay male athlete to win a major professional team sport title in the United States.
Yeah, and people are aware, I guess, of the story of Justin Fashanu going back in time in English football. And I think why this is a talking point is because of the facts we lay out there, that so few people feel willing to do it. And it's a case of why is it in football it's harder than maybe in some other sports, although again, I think across sport generally it's an issue, but clearly there's more to do to get to this situation where the discussion of this is no longer relevant, that it's just a matter-of-fact thing. But I do think I don't have any issue with it being a big story. I think it's important that it is. I think it's extremely important that it is, even though there will probably be extremes of reaction he might be exposed to that might in some cases make other people more reluctant to do it. You mentioned the high-profile support that he's got. Unfortunately, you do need these people to lead the way to the point where for the next generation it's not a bigger thing. But I think if we talked about this maybe in 2013 with that Robbie Rogers case, which I remember discussing at the time, we probably would have hoped by 2021 we'd be further along down that road than we are, and we're not.
Yeah, I mean, it is very depressing that we're still.
Oh yeah, you want not to have to talk about it.
No.
You know what I mean? And
I do remember.
But you still have to. It has to be. It's a chat that needs to be to be sort of. I hate to use the word, but to be normalised. That it's no longer a thing. It just comes up.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
We're a long way from that in football. A long way from it.
Do you think so?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't be as sure actually.
Well, I mean, it'd be a great thing to be wrong on, but I think you're still talking when you're talking about football as still, globally, it's the biggest sport, and you think of it's played in all sorts of different cultures and societies, and some very liberal, some not, and yet, you're still looking at a very sort of small statistical number. And again, you can talk about. Not to bring everything back to Newcastle, but you look at instances, where ownerships of certain clubs are coming from and stuff, and do players want to even invite that discussion for themselves? I mean,
that's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, I guess the hope would be. Very soon, high-profile player comes forward. Again, I hate talking about even the phrase coming out.
I know, I hate it as well. And the language of it is so, you can end up coming across in a way you don't want to come across, by speaking about it. It's.
So hopefully, high-profile player decides, screw this, I'm pretty open about this. No big deal to me. I'm an open person. It's not some big weight I'm carrying to just say it and says it. And I'd be pretty optimistic that generally we'd realise very quickly that people get on with it, that the abuse isn't intolerable, that generally it's a massively supportive environment, and then within 5 years after that there's multitudes
Yeah, no, that is the ideal scenario. But again, in 2021, we've seen issues in the last 12 months with around racism in stadiums. We've seen a situation in Hungary. We've seen, the situation in Hungary where there was obviously legislation there which was sort of related to maybe the LGBT community there feeling less welcome in their own country. I think their goalkeeper spoke out about it and got some grief around it, didn't he? So again, like there's the climate. There isn't a broad climate, I think, within football that would make people, I think, feel it's entirely welcoming that could happen in great numbers. I would love to be wrong about that, of course, but I'm not sure if I 100% share your confidence. But maybe in a generation's time, we're talking about that rather than maybe 5 years' time.
And do you think it's more fear of the terraces or fear of the dressing room?
Yeah, I wonder about that. I'm not so sure the dressing room thing would be as big a thing. I don't know, but I would imagine that there are cases where dressing rooms are aware of a player's sexuality, but just it's not in the public domain. I think to some degree, because there's such a handful of examples, you instantly become high profile the minute you say that's where you are, and what you want is that strength in numbers to the point where you cease to, like, we're talking about a player playing for Adelaide that we would never talk about for any other reason, and that's why he's making headlines around the world. As I said, I understand why that is, but you need to reach the point where it's not even something we need to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Finland 1, Republic of Ireland 2. That's a massive result for...
it's huge.
So that sets them up. If they don't get second place now, something will have gone badly wrong.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a Karen Duggan on this morning with the lads. It does feel sometimes they've had the problem with being the clinical team as the favourites almost, and it's probably a thing we've seen with the men's team, with Irish football teams, not always great in that scenario, but I think that feels like a real landmark victory for them. It's put themselves in this position that really, if they're efficient against Slovakia and certainly Georgia, I think everyone's expected to hammer them, but it seems like the Slovakia games are pretty key. If they can be efficient against them, then it comes round to Finland coming to Dublin later next year, I believe it is, and really you just need to avoid defeat in that game, and you're fine. And who knows, if Finland do something to Sweden, you can dream bigger. Probably unlikely, you would think, but they've put themselves in a great position. I think even after the failure of the Euros, where really they messed it up, they completely, it was a bottle job, really. It's a horrible thing to say, but it's a complete bottle job. I think even to get to a playoff, even if they don't get through it, I still think to get to a match of that size with the interest that's building now, I think it will be massive. I think the playoff system for the runners-up, there's a degree of complication around it, but effectively if they're runners-up, they're going to have the biggest game that Irish women's football has ever experienced, in this country, and that is a great thing. It's not some kind of manufactured interest, it's real. This is proper big games coming. So it's great to put themselves in that position, but now they've set a standard for themselves that of course they have to follow up on.
Before a clock comes against us, I mentioned at the top of the show a piece that you were tweeting about earlier in The Athletic that you obviously recommend and people should check it themselves. It's Stuart James and Stephen Snare in The Athletic. The Viking clap is ruined forever is the headline. We all remember the Viking clap. Iceland, everybody's second favourite team at the Euros. They beat England very famously. Smallest nation to ever qualify for World Cup finals, and the thunderclap. And you would have thought, well, God, this is just a great story all over. Flash forward a couple of years, their most recent World Cup qualifier against Armenia in the National Stadium, empty seats everywhere. The crowd is 1,697, their lowest crowd for a competitive fixture since 1997. And the point being made and the point teased out across this very long piece is that Icelandic football and this senior men's team in particular has been hit with accusations of sexual assault, and the board members, all 15 board members and the president resigned during the summer. Now, when I say this team, I mean some individuals on this team, not this entire team. That's an important distinction to make. But the Icelandic FA are in crisis, plunged into crisis, resignations everywhere. claims of, well, there were no complaints made, and then it turns out alleged victims are coming forward saying, well, I did make a complaint, for instance, and that was the reason the president had to resign over the summer. So it's a long piece, it's a dense piece, it's complicated, but it's a shocking state of affairs.
It is, I definitely think, with something like that, it's a lengthy piece. I don't know how long it is, but, thousands of words. And as I said, it's like you work on pieces of that nature, it's very important. You have to have all the nuances of, the claims, the counterclaims, the defence, and, there's a lot to it. And that's why you don't want to sort of just, rashly sort of read out certain lines from it. It's one of those where you need to go through the whole thing. But certainly what you can say is that sort of stark bottom line image of the Icelandic national team that were the heroes of Euro 2016 wasn't even just like the crowd scenes and the victories. It was that even we would have been on here probably talking afterwards about the Icelandic Federation. They give their prize money to the clubs. Aren't they a great example to associations everywhere for how to maximise this and that? And yet this piece paints a very different picture of the climate around that team and of the stewardship and the leadership of football in that country. And as you said, the facts are the facts. People have resigned their position, the board has been forced to leave, the top man had to step away, and clearly the public have spoken. When you have a situation where 1,700 people are attending an Iceland game within 5 years of that, it would suggest that people on the ground there are taking this matter seriously. They're not just dismissing it as paper talk or whatever. This is something that's led to a real crisis of confidence there, and it's quite shocking stuff. Right, I mean, the one thing I would say is the detail that really struck with me was the suggestion, the inference that before the squad for a recent international was picked, they actually had to bring in some campaigners of a group to see that they were okay with all the names on the list. Okay. Which is mad stuff. And as I said, that's not to be sort of sweeping a brush over the whole thing, but just even the fact that that's a discussion that's happening, it's very unusual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent. Cheers, Dan. Thanks for that this evening. Thanks a million. Take a break.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Catch the biggest live Premier League games every weekend on Sky Sports.
The famous Holland and Barrett 1 cent sale is back, with buy one get one for just 1 cent on vitamin D, Manuka honey, natural skincare and much more. And you can even mix and match. Shop in-store or at hollandandbarrett.ie. Ends 14th of the 11th, 21. Selected items